Bless the Lord. Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2, the first 10 verses. It reads as follows. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbanks. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." I want to preach from this subject today. Just repeat it with me for clarity and say, a tale of two mamas. Tale of two mamas. There was a period in Israel's history before she became a monarchy, after the Exodus and the 40 years in the wilderness and the period in Canaan. They were governed by judges and not kings. There were women judges and men judges. There were popular judges. There were warrior judges. There were powerful judges. There were wise judges. And some of the most popular names and some of the most familiar names in history come from that period. You have a brother by the name of Gideon. He had 32,000 troops to go up against their oppressor, but God had a different plan and strategy. Samson was the mightiest man in Israel. He was strong in one area, but he had a weakness in another area. I believe we preached about that last week or the week before. Does anyone remember what Samson's weakness was? Well, maybe I asked that wrong. Amen. Maybe you don't remember, but can anyone relate to the weakness that Samson had? Come on, brother, say amen. But God showed the world the difference between the symbol of Samson's strength, his hair, and the source of Samson's strength, which was God. But then there was a woman by the name of Deborah who was a judge. She was a woman, she was a wife, she was a warrior and a source of wisdom to whom the people flocked to for help. The world in which she lived was a patriarchal world. Women were considered to be weaker, to be defective, to be inferior. And the world in which we live has not changed very much since Deborah's day. Many in our day think women should stay in their place, but God showed the world that he will use a woman just like he will use a man. And God will sometimes use a woman to do what a man is afraid to do. God did it with Deborah in the Bible. God did it with Yah Santwa in Ghana. God did it with Barbara Jordan in Texas. God did it with Rosa Parks in Montgomery. God did it with Harriet Tubman in slavery. And God did it with some of these mamas in the sanctuary right here today sitting next to you. We read today in our text about Moses, but keep in mind that Moses only became the kind of man that he was because of the type of mother that he had. In fact, who he was very much determined by the type of mothers that he had. Because God blessed Moses by giving him not one, but by giving him two mothers. Not only was Moses blessed to have two mothers, but they were both good mothers. It's one thing to have one good mama, it's something else to have two good mamas at the same time. They both had good instincts for the roles that they played in Moses' life. For example, they both loved children. Now that may seem like a given, but every woman that has children doesn't necessarily love children. Am I in the right house? Where's Frida here? She works for DCF. You understand what I'm saying? Every mama who have children don't necessarily love children. Not every woman that has children wanted to have children. But these two women wanted children. And that was no small thing in the day and time that they lived in, because Moses' two mothers lived during a period that there was a culture of death in the land that they lived. For when we look at our text, we see Moses' sister Miriam standing as a sentry to watch out for her baby brother. For her baby brother was a boy that was born with a death sentence over his head. The government had prepared his death certificate before his parents ever saw his birth certificate. The culture into which Moses was born was designed to kill him before he could ever live. For a decree had gone out from the very throne of Pharaoh that every male child born to a Hebrew woman was to be thrown in the Nile River and drowned. And Moses' birth mother, Jochebed, was a Hebrew woman. Thus she had a choice to make. The society in which she lived made it virtually impossible to keep her child, and she could have decided to simply allow her child to be thrown away. I mean, her son was not wanted. She could have chosen death, which would have been the easy choice. But she chose life instead of death. And this was not an easy decision for her to make, because it required her to hide her child for 3 whole months, always fearing that the Egyptian soldiers would show up and discover the baby. And not only would they kill the child, but they would punish her entire family for disobeying the law. Choosing life for her was not an easy decision. But then when we consider Pharaoh's daughter, she knew who this baby was. For Exodus 2:6 tells us that she opened the basket and she saw the baby. The baby was crying. She felt sorry for him. And she said, "This is one of the Hebrew babies." She knew that he was a Hebrew. And her father had decreed that these children should die. Her society had decided that these babies should not live. And common wisdom had determined that these children were a threat to the nation. It would have been so easy to let the child die, but she chose life instead. Both mothers lived in a culture of death. Both mothers lived in a society that had decreed certain children should not live. And may I let you in on a secret? We live in the same kind of society today. Yeah, Lincoln University did a study on the plight of black men and reported some of the same doom and gloom that Moses was born under here in the 21st century. 3,000 years after Moses was born, we live under the same type of decree that he lived under. For we live in a day and age where 75% of blacks in college are women. Black men are being killed off academically and physically long before they get to college age. Only 30% of black boys who enter high school graduate from high school. Society has already prepared their death certificates. Prisons are being built based upon the zip code, the census, and the statistics in our community. And the government has already prepared the death certificate before the parents can see the birth certificate. The culture into which black boys are born are designed to kill them before they even have a chance to live.